My vision is simple: a world in which Latinas hold jobs of impact, whether that's leadership positions or run their own businesses, and are not held back by fears or limiting beliefs. And today, I speak with a real trailblazer. Hi, this is Diana Burnell. I'm a career strategist guiding Latina professionals to reach their ambitious goals. And I speak with Eva Angelina Romero. She is owner broker of Century 21 Capital Properties in Nashville. We talk about a new report from Century 21 on Latino home ownership. And then we get into all types of topics about her experience and her rise as a business owner and how she is inspiring her community. Let's jump in. Hi, Eva. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Diana. I'm so excited to be on your podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love it. And I want to hear more about your work background as
Yeah.
well. And we want to talk about this very interesting report that Century 21
Yes.
did about home ownership in the Latino community. But before we talk about those findings, can you speak to what prompted Century 21 to even do this type of study?
Century 21 has been at the forefront of really understanding homeownership and specifically also Hispanic homeownership. They're a very recognized brand internationally. So I think that they've seen the growth within the Hispanic community towards homeownership. So I think it just was an organic, like, let's see what's happening. Let's confirm with some data a lot of the things that we're already seeing. They're already doing a lot of the things. They're already a very active voice within the Hispanic community. So I just think it was an organic, like, let's get some data points, let's see where we're at. And they're seeing the trends. They're seeing the rise in Hispanic homeownership throughout the US. And they're already doing a lot of the work. So it was just one of those things I think that just happened organically for them.
Yeah, and I think that's why you and I connected at this moment too, because I just posted, not only because it was Hispanic Heritage Month, but because it was Latina Equal Pay Day the other day, about the growing community of Latinos in the US that you and I know, and a lot of people listening know. Not only are we 19% of the population, but we contribute so much to the economy, and that includes buying homes. And so I do appreciate when a company goes out of its way to learn more about its consumers. And that's why I thought this was a relevant conversation, at least for me, to learn more about it. So, can you talk about some of the key findings from this report?
So one of the things that the report found, I think one of the main ones is that Hispanic homeowners are willing to sacrifice their dream home for community. And I see it every day, and a lot of the things that they really, to have a home is a big accomplishment for anybody. But for
Mhm.
Hispanic homeowners, they really will, sacrifice a lot of the things that is, considered a dream home to find their community, and to have their own. They're willing to sometimes make the drive and do a lot of the things. So that was I mean, being in the field, I kind of already knew that because my clients will be qualified for X amount of money. And sometimes it's like, well, I might not have that in a certain way, but they're willing, if they can find the jobs, if they can find the good schools, if they can find a sense of community, they're willing to do to do those sacrifices, for a sense of community and knowing that they have a good opportunity somewhere.
Yes. Yes. And I think we've all been raised with that term, our dream home, right? That was something that I think everyone can relate to. But Century 21 also kind of labeled it their dream community, which I thought was nice to put a word, a phrase around that. So, what does that dream community look like for many of the buyers that you're working
For
with?
what I have found is schools. I think for a lot of families, schools are very important to know what kind of schools their
Mhm.
kids are going to be going to. Opportunity for growth in their profession, job
Yeah. Yeah.
opportunity,
Yeah.
because for
Yeah.
them it's like sustainability. Our community is very hardworking community. Want their sense of, like, I'm, accomplishment and supporting their family. But so for me, it's like they're really looking for that opportunity, the community that offers a lot of the things that is going to equal progress. What does that mean? And
Mhm.
I see it here in Nashville. Like, Clarksville's a military town. It's about an hour away. The houses are a little bit more affordable than they are in Nashville, and they're willing to do the commute because they have a lot of the things that a big metro, city has, but they already have all this. And there's a lot of work. There's a lot of opportunity too. So I feel like they're willing to do all that, and I agree with you. Like the dream home, I think we all grew up thinking, oh, the dream home looks a certain way, and but they're willing to do a lot of those things just to get that community and all those things that I mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about my own parents, when my mom moved to either New York or Chicago from Puerto Rico, I said, "Why did you come?" And she said, "For opportunity." And I think the dream home, the dream
Yes,
community is
an
part of that
opportunity.
opportunity. And I know a lot of the clients that you probably work with, though, have mom and abuela and the sister. Can you talk a little bit about what that purchasing experience is like with the Latino family? I mean, is it as I envision it to be, and what you and I have talked about a little bit offline, that it's not just one person showing up?
It's not. It's not. I actually had three generations in my conference room: grandmother, mom, kids. And I think I mentioned to us in a conversation with you in a conversation, I'm seeing a lot of these young millennials, a lot of these younger kids helping their parents maybe purchase homes because maybe their parents weren't able to for whatever reason, or maybe they don't have the same access to capital because maybe they don't have their
Mhm.
legal status yet. There's a lot of things. They don't have
Credit.
credit. So then you have abuela there to just say, the matriarch of the family. It's quite interesting, and for me, it just brings back memories when I was a kid with my mom not being able to buy a home too, and it's just like it is a family affair. It's very generational.
Mhm.
Like you will see that, and you think when you're in it, you see it, and it's a reminder. But sometimes you forget because you go out about and say like, "Whoa, I'm doing all these things," but for a lot of people, it is a family. It's a family, or it's a family decision. You have
Yeah.
up to, I
Yeah.
mean, I've had up to maybe 7 people in my conference room for a home buyer consultation. Yeah, and that's just like some adults. Obviously there's some children, which they're also part of the conversation, which I love when families bring their kids, or even their like young adults, even because I think it has to be that conversation of like this.
Oh, 100% they have to learn. I mean, if I thought back to my family's history with home ownership, it took me a while to like really think through and figure out my dad never lived in a house. He had a home, but it was an apartment. So when they purchased their house, that was the first time he had ever lived in a house. And now, of course, my kids grew up in a house, but they were born in an apartment. That's for sure. For the first 2 years, they were in an apartment. So for them to be able to see this process, I think is really important. And you mentioned a key group, millennials, and I want to hear more about that because millennials, were raised and saw the global financial crisis. They saw the mortgage meltdown. They might have been impacted. Their families might have lost their homes, or certainly they would have seen it as young people. So is that conversation different with
I
millennials?
think the conversation that I've seen is sometimes it's still a big. I would say education is still a big piece of every conversation. Because to your
Yeah.
point, they did see that, but they also, a lot of times, you would think that they would understand the ins and outs of what it takes to buy a home because they've grown up here. They understand a little bit more about how
Mhm.
financial, our financial institutions, credit, but that's not always the case. I'm actually always having those
Mm.
conversations of why is it important to own your home, right? They know their parents. I find that parents are bringing them in, like, come and, and I just find that interesting. And it's like, I just think education can never stop. And we are seeing young millennials, I believe, are driving home ownership right now. In Tennessee, we have a young Latino community. I think 25 to 35 is what I'm seeing, that they're really the ones purchasing homes, and it's
Mhm.
incredible. But you still have to educate about the importance of why you should be owning your home to build, one avenue of building wealth,
Mhm.
and also credit, which I am shocked that it is still a very active conversation. I mean, I have it with my kids. It's not something that's taught in schools. Financial literacy
Mhm.
is not taught in schools. So we have to,
It's not.
no, not enough. And I would think it now, I grew up not knowing enough, right? And I don't know how you felt, but
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about credit.
No, and the challenge now is that you and I wanna raise our kids to be financially literate and to figure out how to budget and plan for the future, whether that's 5, 20 years down the road, but the tools are so different. My kids do everything on their device, so they don't know what to do with a check. I mean, when my daughter first got her job and they gave her a physical check, we had to figure that out for her, and now everything is so digital, so it's kind of really hard for me to plan with them around budgeting and things like that because of financial literacy. But we'll get there. Look, these are the good problems to
Yes.
have, right?
Uh-huh.
That I say. But one thing I also want to talk about when it comes to the family, especially, are the voices in our heads. Because the reality is that there have been communities who have been discriminated against. You can't rent here, you can't buy here. So our parents, our grandparents, certainly and rightfully so, carry with them those experiences that translate down to the young people. So, how do we build trust for, quite frankly, what is probably the largest transaction that these folks are ever going to make?
Yeah, and I think it comes with, even though I'm seeing all these young millennials, coming to these buyer consultations with their family or their mom or their dad or their abuela or abuelo, it's important that they're going to feel trust. I feel number one, speaking the language is always very helpful, especially because even though they
Mhm.
might speak English, you still have to explain the process to the entire family. And I feel like it just is a level of trust. Knowing the language, understanding the culture is super important. But yeah, having those conversations and building that trust and making them feel like they belong. One of the things I find, I know I'm talking a lot about education, Diana, but I think it's important that I tell my team this all the time is we really need to inspire our community. We really need to help them believe that it's possible still because they do and they do, but to your point, they have those doubts. They've had these experiences and teaching them why not you? Why not you? If you feel not why you, why is that coming, whatever you're dealing with, where is that coming from? Well, let me teach you how, and really educate but also inspire our community.
Mhm, mhm. You're talking about limiting beliefs,
And
Eva, and I have an episode coming up on
yes,
that, actually in a few weeks because we've seen so much and we've been taught so much that it is hard to overcome those old beliefs that, "No, that neighborhood's not for me," or, "A two-story house is not for me." But what we have to do is remind people, hopefully not convince them, but just remind them that, yes, you are worth a two-story house. You are worth and you deserve to live in that neighborhood if you can afford it, and those are I think just these active conversations, especially as I work with, Latina professionals, that yes, you can get ahead and you deserve that corner office or you deserve that raise. And I imagine you have a lot of single Latina homeowners that are buying their own places by
yeah,
themselves.
absolutely. A lot of single moms that are
Mm,
wanting something for their children. They're looking for obviously that stability, something to call their own, but also they're looking for something to leave behind to their kids. Because that's literally like, what
yes,
am I gonna give my kids? What am I gonna
yes,
what
yes.
am I gonna give or leave behind to them? So yeah, absolutely. A lot of young mothers or all honestly all ages then it doesn't matter. I mean, I've seen women a little older and I consider my 40s 50s. You would it would incredibly surprising to see. It's not a matter
Mhm.
of age really, women and
Yeah.
children.
Yeah, yeah, and I know it's tempting to say, "Oh, I'm just gonna rent," because that conversation there's 2 conversations that have been out in the news a lot lately amongst everything else, but one is whether or not college is worth it, and I still say that answer is yes, and then some people are like, "Well, in Europe they rent," or some other people just rent, and I still think it's worth it to own, and I am not an advertisement for Century 21 right now. I'm not getting anything from this conversation, but,
Yeah.
I see these stories and I watch my own parents, and my parents are in a very fixed income, right? Bare minimum, boom. If they were subject to rent increases at somebody else's whim, I don't know how we would manage that. But thank God they own their house outright. And some people are going to be taking a gamble with their lives if they don't make that investment early on.
Yeah, and to your point, it's very true. It's just owning a home is and also learning how to sustain that consistency. It shows time over time, like owning is better than renting, and I think that
Mhm,
a lot of
mhm,
people might maybe in other cities are like, no, well, it's just too expensive. It's not, I don't know how I'm gonna afford that property, when it's so expensive, over half a million, income. I get that. But you know what I realized people when they really believe in the possibility and like owning is better, they'll figure it out. They will maybe rent a
mm.
room or figure out another way to make that possibility for them to own a home and seeing the value, not only, this, the consistency of being in the same area if you have young children, also the obviously the equity that it'll build over time, that you don't can't do that with renting, right? There's just so many tax
Mm-hmm.
benefits. There's a lot of great things that come with owning a home. So
Mm-hmm.
that it's just once again a matter of educating them why it's important, because I see it here. I mean, rents are just expensive. They're just as expensive, and they go up every at least 3 to 4% every year, sometimes even more. I always like to paint two different pictures. This is why you should own versus renting. And maybe for a season you need to rent, right? Because you need to build
Mm-hmm.
that financial stability or whatever it is. But then this is the next step, right? And always showing them why. And like I said, education. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a particular success story or just a story of someone that you worked with that you made their dream home come true and it just really, stayed with you?
I have so many. I think recently one of my buyers that when I moved to Tennessee, I've been in the business now for over 15 years, but I started my business here in Tennessee about 10 years ago. So he was one of my first Hispanic buyers, came with his three little kids to my consultation, didn't have his legal status yet, but still wanted to buy. So we got him into a good loan, ITN loan. We started working on, he came to me about maybe 4 years after saying, Eva, I've paid my home off. And I was like, okay, paid it off.
What?
He's like, I want to buy another house and I want to rent. And I'm
Oh.
like, good, let's go. So he just closed on his first rental property. And I'm very happy. His kids are a little older. And those are the stories because, he was one of those, Diana, that was like, I just want a home for my kids. This is all, I'm happy, which is fine, which I was very happy. But now he's thinking as an investor. Now he's thinking, oh,
Mm.
I've already paid, my house. I have this money coming in. I'm working really hard. What's next?
Mhm.
And in a lot of
Yeah.
my consultations, I talk about the power of equity in real estate and how, yes, owning your home, but you also, if this is a way that you want to build a lot more wealth, or this is an avenue you can invest, you can become a landlord, you can. So it's just that for me was incredible because his kids are, it's been 10 years and we've just kept in touch, and I'm sure he'll pay that house off and buy another one, right?
I love it. That's a great one. That's a great story. But I wanna hear your story too, because you are from California and you're one of the many people who is in Tennessee now. So tell us a little bit about your business background.
Yeah. So it's funny because during COVID, a lot of people from California migrated here, like hundreds and thousands. I don't even know. And I
Oh,
was here
yeah.
before that exodus out of California, and I loved California, but I knew for me as a single mom, it was very hard. I was teaching, which I loved. I didn't understand. We talked about financial literacy. College educated, Diane, didn't know much about it. Had loans, had now single mom. I was struggling in LA. And the broker that was helping me transition, I had bought my first property. I was so grateful for that. But then the market crashed and I lost it all. And I wish I would have known everything I know now, but it was one of those things that my broker at the time said, have you thought about a career in real estate? I go, you know what? I don't know. I still didn't know much about it. My first purchase was not because I understood generational wealth, or I'm going to build my wealth in real estate. It was because I just wanted to have my own place and I was paying. It was kind of the same conversations, but it didn't
It's
understand
practical.
the power. Nobody had said, so long story short, this broker kind of said, come to my office. I want you to show you what I do. And he worked a lot, like 90%, 99% was Hispanic families he worked with. And I remember shadowing, experiencing people get their home for the first time, and I go, okay, I like this. I really enjoyed it. I shadowed somebody doing a closing with this lady that I had experience with. She was from Costa Rica, a sweet lady. And I remember we gave her her keys and she was in tears crying with so much gratitude. And I will never forget that. And that got me sold. And obviously, I was going through a transition. I needed more income. And I will not say that wasn't a motivating force for me. Plus, I had a flexible schedule, but I understood the
Mhm.
power of real estate. a lot more after that experience. And I did that a few years, started my own company there, and then I moved to Tennessee, did the same here. And I have just been working. When I arrived here, I think I told you, like, I was looking for my community because, in California, we are the majority. Hispanics tend to be ever. So that was my clientele. So when I moved here, I was doing a lot more higher end, transactions, luxury type. And I just felt like I just miss. It's a different experience. I can't. It's a great experience, but I was used to working with first time home buyers and my community. So in Tennessee, the Hispanic community has grown a lot in the last 10 years that I've been here. Organically, because I am Latina, a lot of people started calling me, hey, can you help me buy a house? And it just happened where now my team is all bilingual. We tailor to the Hispanic first time home buyers. A lot of our clients are first time home buyers, but that is where my heart is because I go back to
Hmm.
those stories of like, how can I help other people? So my team and I, that's what we do. And I have other ventures, other things I do, but this is a passion project for me. It's not only selling real estate; it's really, really changing people's lives with investing in their biggest asset. I could go on and on talking, but it comes from my background. Just my mom wasn't able to own a home. I was the first one in my
Hmm.
family to have brought my family to live with me. My mom and all my sisters were able to experience what it was to have your own home, and I that's an incredible experience that I'd love to share with other people.
Yeah, and that speaks to the common values that we see in the Latino community, work and family. Those 2 go hand in hand, and that's sort of like the juxtaposition of your work, right? That you are helping people, achieve their dreams through home ownership. So, can you speak a little bit about being a businesswoman, especially today? Because, when I think of real estate agents, I think obviously of the showing the house and the staging and all that, but I had a friend who did it for a while, and she's like, "Oh, no, 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 it's much more than what you see because you're running this
Yeah.
business."
I like to think of us as, I mean, we inspire, we help people day to day to navigate, we problem solve. We problem solve whatever it is. And I will say that being a Latina in Tennessee was interesting for me. And I was actually shocked. I studied a Southern history in college. And I loved history. It reminded me a lot of like the novelas growing up. Like I love the drama and I love history. I was going to be an attorney, but that's another story. But here I am in the South now, and I'm thinking it's 2010, 11, and I still feel like a lot of differences. I'm like, why does this feel different? Why?
Mhm.
I when we moved here, Diana, my husband was one of the first Latino oral surgeons. When I franchised, I was the first Latina franchisee for Century 21. And that to me is still very like, really? Like,
What?
yeah,
What?
I was the first. There was no Latina brokers in Tennessee, in the entire state of Tennessee. I think they did all the research, but I had a franchise. I had my own boutique. I was one of the first that I knew of in metro area to have be a broker owner. Now I know a couple more. This was only 10 years ago. And that tells me, growing up where I saw a lot of business professionals being Latino, a lot more, right? So it is an interesting situation where now I'm seeing, so I feel Tennessee is like 10, 12 years behind from bigger cities. So that's why you're seeing a lot of younger, millennials and their kids, but it's interesting to see that, because I just felt it didn't feel home for a while because that's not what I was used to.
Mhm.
So there were some challenges there, and I still think there are some challenges, and I think those conversations need to happen. There's not a lot of Latino professionals. There's more now, but starting, I think a lot of our community still is in construction and like labor type positions. So it's important
Mhm.
to sometimes help change that the narrative is not always like there's all sorts of different things we bring to the table, and I think that is
Mhm.
changing with time. And these conversations that are important, the importance of what Hispanics bring to the table, which is a lot, by the way.
Yes. And here you are, a great success story of being the first. And we talk about this a lot. And I'm thinking that growing up in California for you, where Latinos are the largest group, right? Especially here in Southern California, that you were able to see Latina leaders, Latina business owners. So it didn't strike you as so odd to be your own business person, but then getting to Tennessee and realizing, kind of looking around like, wait a minute, I'm the only one?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. I just thought that was, well, studying Southern history, I kind of understood it because I remember going to college, going to Natchez, Mississippi to do some research. And I literally felt like I was living in the 1800s. I'm like, I cannot believe it is so segregated here still. Right.
Yeah.
But that was a culture shock for me for sure. And then here, Tennessee, obviously very welcoming. Love this state. This is home. But I will say it wasn't as diverse. I just didn't see. I mean, I remember moving my mom when she was ill and she didn't like it. She goes, I can't walk anywhere. There's not the same sidewalks and the accessibility,
Yeah.
walkability, just a lot of things, right, that you grow up with. And that's your community. So it's changed. And I'm so excited for the change. Obviously, it's great. I just saw a couple of stats from other cities where Hispanics are just growing. The Hispanic families are, we are driving home ownership throughout the U.S. Hispanic, we're at 49.3% or 5% this year. We are the largest demographic, that own homes, and we're going to continue, right? The growth is there.
Wow. Is that 49%? Is that new home purchases?
Yes. Yes, I believe. And
Okay.
last year, and I'll send you the report, the NAREP, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, always puts up a report with a Hispanic Wealth Project. And they talk about these trends and what they're seeing. And they also go by state, like every state, what they're seeing and the top cities. And once again, young Latino home buyers are driving it as well. These young people buying homes. But yeah, we're the largest
Yeah.
demographic right now that has grown buying homes.
Well, and that's why I'm hoping to make these connections, because as businesses see the purchasing power and the contributions of the Latino community, then we can get more women, more Latinos in places of power, of management, of leadership, of making those decisions. The fact that you were the first Latina, were you the first Latina or first Hispanic franchisees at all
No,
for
no.
Century 21?
I
That's
think it was
interesting.
the first Latina franchisee owner, and I don't know about women. That I don't know, but I know I was the first.
Okay. There were probably some
Yeah,
women.
there
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. Because I remember
I think.
yeah, for sure, like the commercials, I'm wearing the gold in honor of
I
Century
should have
21, by the
worn
way.
it too. I definitely. It's funny. I should have worn it too. I didn't think of that. But I didn't think
No,
of that.
they don't make you guys wear those
No,
anymore,
no.
do they?
What's funny that
No.
they rebranded, and I love the rebrand, but it's like a
Yeah,
beige
yeah.
color. It's really pretty. Like I love everything and that's one of the things that I have to say with Century 21. Before I decided, why am I even going to franchise? I mean, I'm on my own.
Mhm.
They spoke to me because of everything they were already doing in the Latino market. It's the most recognized brand internationally with all our clients. They understand C21. They see it in all their countries, Mexico, you name it, everywhere. Also, they already have a lot of the marketing in their language. So for them, and they also have other programs like Conexión that they do. They're empowering women. They have scholarships for women. I don't know if you knew that, but they help women get their licenses. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
So they have so many different things. And I'm like, this is a brand. There was five brands at the time through Realogy. It was Coldwell Banker, C21, a couple of others. And this was the one that called my name because I don't know. Do you see them a lot in Southern California? I'm sure you do. In C20.
Yeah, we see it.
Yeah.
It's California. We see everything.
Yeah.
We see Bob real estate. I mean, seriously, people are just putting up their own sign and trying to sell
Yeah.
their own homes.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, that's a good segue. Where can people find you? I know you're in Nashville, but you're just a great connection for everyone to have. But for those who are looking at Nashville or areas in Tennessee, where
Yes,
can we
I
find you?
am at Inspired Eva on Instagram. Also C21 Capital Properties at C21 Capital Properties. That is my if you C20, I'm the only C21 office in I think Nashville right now, Metro Nashville. So you can find me at
Okay.
Century 21 Capital Properties or Instagram at Inspired Eva.
Okay. Well, I'll drop a little link to that. But thank you so much for sharing not just your work, but your personal story, which is such an inspiration. And I hope other women hear how, again, another story of being the first and making it happen.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for all the work that you're doing because I've read a lot about everything you're doing, and we need these conversations to continue to happen. So thank you, Dan.
That's right. We're going to keep talking. Okay. All right, my friend. Well, you have a good day. Thanks
too.
again.
Ciao.
Thank you for listening. For more, visit cornerofficelatinas.com, where we give you the framework, inspiration, and support you need to reach and thrive in the corner office. We have some free downloads on the website, where you can also sign up for our e-news, so we can keep you posted on workshops and events coming up that you will not want to miss. That's cornerofficelatinas.com. See you next week.